everyone, and welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm your host, Meredith Dykstra, and this is episode number 196. We have our resident cellular healing specialist, Dr. Dan Pompa, on the line, and today we welcome special guest, Annie Brandt. And we have a fascinating topic that we're going to be digging into today, and Annie has an incredible story that she's going to share, her own healing testimony, and I think so many topics that we're going to include in this conversation are so relevant to all of you who are listening and want to include more kind of useful cellular healing tools in your toolbox in your healing journey. So before we dig in with Annie and she shares her incredible healing story, let me tell you a little bit about her. Annie Brandt came to be the president emeritus of Best Answer for Cancer Foundation and the International Organization of Integrative Cancer Physicians from the ground up as a survivor of advanced stage metastatic breast cancer. After being diagnosed in July 2001 with breast cancer and metastases to the lymph, brain, and lungs, Ms. Brandt was told to get your affairs in order and given 3 months to live. She decided to take a journey on the road less traveled and refused the standard of care. No surgery, no high-dose chemotherapy or radiation. Instead, she created her own healing platform of holistic modalities that addressed the diseases in her body, mind, and spirit, and topped it off with targeted cancer therapies. Ms. Brandt believed other patients should have the option of experiencing thriving while surviving. So after being found cancer clear, she founded the Best Answer for Cancer Foundation in 2006. BAFC is a hybrid nonprofit comprised of the physicians group and a general public patient group. Ms. Brandt's book, The Healing Platform, helps cancer patients discover their own best answer for cancer. She's co-authored 2 books, The Kinder, Gentler Cancer Treatment and Celebrating 365 Days of Gratitude. She is also featured in the book, Cool Careers for Girls as Environmentalists. And for more information, you can go to bestanswerforcancer.org or write Annie's email, Annie@bestanswerforcancer.org. So, Annie, welcome to Cellular Healing TV. We're so excited to have this discussion with you.
Thank you, and I'm thrilled to be here. I love what you guys do.
Well, I tell you what, we just had a brief conversation before this, and I already want to come through the screen and hug you. You and I have much common spiritually, emotionally, physically, you name it. We have so much in common. But, obviously, for you, the place to start is, my gosh, your story. I mean, it was like 15 years ago now. Tell us the story. You're a survivor. You got a story to tell. Tell it.
Well, it was really a surprise. So I was taking a shower one day and I found a lump under my left arm, and it was the 4th of July, believe it or not. I thought it was just a swollen lymph node, and I went to the doctor, and they, after more investigation and some scans, they did a biopsy of the lymph node and found that it was cancer, and it was at least stage 2 because it was in the lymph. So it was a real shock, because I was on a healthy diet, and I didn't have a whole lot of stress to speak of. But I also did have a dysfunctional immune syndrome, so I suppose I shouldn't have been that surprised. But after more scans, they found out that it was further spread than that. It was also in my brain and my lungs. So the diagnosis went from stage 2 to, you might have 3 to 5 months, get your affairs in order. But if you do surgery, chemo, and radiation, it could be the 5 months. And so I was like most people. It really is that deer in the headlights. And I went home, and I was very upset, and I was crying, and I heard a voice. It was so real. I thought someone had broken in the house, and the voice said, "I love you, and I'm not going to let anything bad happen to you."
Oh, wow.
And at that point, when it started talking, I realized it wasn't someone in the house. It was actually resonating from within me, and it was that real. It was God. And I wasn't all that firm a believer at the time. Wow. So when I heard that voice, I thought, oh, wow, it really shocked me and startled me and set me down. And when I thought about the words, it was like, oh, yeah, okay, he's saying the truth, because if I die, there's nothing bad about that. I'm going to heaven. I'm going to him. And if I live, I'll have something to help others with. So at that point, the fear just completely left me. I really knew that either way, it was going to be just fine. And it sounds very Pollyanna, but I've never changed that feeling. That feeling's never changed. The fear has never come back. And at that point, it turned into a journey of discovery, and
Well,
just it's really been cool.
I guess that's part of your decision, because most people, I can tell you for me, if I was given, 6 months to live, if I did chemo, 3 months if I don't, I would never, ever make that decision. However, that's not most people. Most people, would make that decision, right? I mean, just to get 3 months, just to get 6 months, I wouldn't do it, if you gave me another year, 2 years, I wouldn't make that decision, right? So why do you think you made that decision? I mean,
Okay, so my health story actually started in '92 with the first death diagnosis, that I had a dysfunctional immune syndrome.
Yeah, I can ask about that. I wanted to know more about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was they didn't really know what it was. They gave it a label, and they said it was an immune dysfunction syndrome, and they didn't know what to do about it. They had no therapies for it. All they could do was give me drugs for the side effects, and all they knew was that it killed most people. And so that was '92. So that was my first realization that modern medicine couldn't always help, that there wasn't a pill for everything.
How did they measure that? Did they just look at white blood cells? How did they measure and say you had a dysfunctional immune system?
No, it was really strange. They did immune tests, and they saw that it wasn't, that my immune system wasn't quite functioning, but it was dysfunctional in that it was, some days it was fine, some days it was, things were out of whack. They watched it for 6 months. They did all kinds of blood work. We did scans. They did everything. And then it became a diagnosis of exclusion. So they excluded a list of diseases, and what they were left with was this immune dysfunction syndrome. So it was really just really strange. But like I say, the biggest thing I got out of that was that I could do something for myself, that when you can't rely on conventional medicine, you can look at other things, you can find other things.
Right.
That was a whole new world. And most people are like that.
Yeah, that changed your thinking. Okay, I have to do something for myself. Now, did they say what the outcome would have been? What was the prognosis then, even for that?
Yeah, the prognosis was that I would, because it was dysfunctional, I would probably have other diseases, that most people got cancer, most people died.
Okay.
And so that was 1992. And then 94, I had just kind of gotten back on my feet a little bit. I mean, I was functional. I would say I was just functional, which was really good because I'd been bedridden. So I was functional by 94. And then I had another very debilitating episode. I was in the hospital, ended up in the hospital vomiting for 13 days. It took them 13 days to stabilize me. And I had neurological symptoms of that from that time. I was blind in one eye, and was numb down most one side of my body. So after a number of hospital tests, they diagnosed me with multiple sclerosis. I got a second opinion, thinking I'd been misdiagnosed the first time with the first disease, but no, I was told I had both of them. I was that lucky. And so they said I would be in a wheelchair in 6 months and dead in 2 years.
You've had a diagnosis. I mean, honestly, it's remarkable.
Well, there was my second example of, okay, what could modern medicine do for progressive aggressive multiple sclerosis? Not much. They could do drugs to alleviate some of the symptoms.
That's it.
So again, I was kind of on my own. And so I within 6 months, I went on a diet. I got on supplements. Within 6 months, I had no other symptoms. I regained all my functionality, and I never had another episode.
Okay, so what are some of the things you did right there, just to get to that point?
Okay, well, the biggest thing with MS was the diet. I adopted the Swank MS diet, which is basically a very clean, organic, no red meat, no dairy, no yeast, no nothing, pretty much. It was just clean fruits and, well, not even fruit, clean vegetables and light meats. Yep. And then I added a supplement program to that. And I found the supplement program in a little pamphlet a lady brought home from my mom and dad's church. And it was called New Hope, Real Help for Those with Multiple Sclerosis. And it was written by a guy who had multiple sclerosis, John Pagler. And he happened to own a health food store. So he took the Swank diet and added supplements to it to repair the brain,
right?
Repair and renourish the brain. So I did that. And like I say, but the symptoms disappeared, and I regained everything. I've never had another episode. One thing I also learned with the MS and the first diagnosis was detoxification of the body, and more with the MS, because at that point I thought, my blood's got to be really thick with all of this stuff, to cause all the platelets and damage the brain. So that's when I started doing a physical detox. First time was 94, and I found an herbal mixture called SCACT, which is now very well known. It wasn't then. And the 4 herbs I got organically, and I weighed them and mixed them and brewed them and steeped them and measured it out and a whole bit. And so that also helped too. And I did another sort of detox, cellular detox, which is, I love your show. It was wild blue-green algae, which also digests at the cellular level and pushes out toxins. So yeah, those 2 diagnoses really got me to the point where I think I didn't just want to kill myself faster than the cancer could when I got the cancer diagnosis. So, you say the 3 months, and why did I make that decision? I really think at that point I knew that there could be other options. And when I thought about having only 3 months or 5 months, and I thought about the picture of someone going through surgery, chemo, and radiation, I said, okay, how do I want to live and how do I want to die?
Yeah.
Okay, and I knew I didn't want to live that way, and I didn't want to die that way. So that's how I made my decision.
Yeah, sometimes the family pressure is why people end up making that decision, oddly enough. I mean, where they don't want to, but they feel like, I'm going to die and I don't want to disappoint them. Here's the thing that everyone uses. It's, we did all we can. She did everything she can. Now, when you do chemo, radiation, and surgeries, that's all, now you've done everything, right? But if you don't do those things, then you can't make that statement in people's mind, right? It's like, as long as you did everything you can, chemo, radiation, then our conscience are clear, but unfortunately, those are bad words.
And don't you think we need a paradigm shift? Because if you look at surgery, chemo, and radiation and the damages that they do to the body and the immune system and the vital body organs, and then you think of the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. Why would you do those things first? Why wouldn't you do first do no harm things first, and then if they didn't work, try the really superpowered high dose chemo and radiation? Yeah, that's my thinking.
Yeah, me too. That's obviously my thinking as well. All right, I'm going to ask the question that I already know the answer, but they're thinking. All right, so I'm going to ask because I know they're thinking. All right, so you beat cancer. What was the one thing? What was the most important thing that you did that you were able to beat cancer?
Oh my gosh, and I love you for asking that question. Yeah, people ask me all the time, what do you think? What did you do? And I said, well, first of all, I did everything. I did everything that made sense, that had good science behind it, that had anecdotal history behind it. I really, investigated, I researched. I didn't just jump, but I did a lot of things. Yeah. But the thing that I consider to be my kicker, it was really the spiritual connection, having a God, and knowing that really God is large and in charge. That's one of my favorite phrases, because he's the only one, or she's the only one, who knows when, where, how I'm going to go. Everyone else just has an opinion, including me. So knowing that, believing that, took all the pressure off. It really, there was nothing for me to do except try and be healthy and vibrant. And his job was when I was going to go and how I was going to go. So
it's spring, and I want to go in that direction because we this year on Cell TV really played a lot into the mental aspect, the emotional aspect of healing, and even chronic disease. Right, it can go one way or another. And then we're going to get into some of the other things that you did, because we agree, as far as therapies go, you're doing it all, right? There's many things, you can't focus on one thing. But I agree with you on this emotional topic. So tell us about that. Tell us about the mindset. I mean, you did partly already, but even ongoing, what did you do to make that better? What can they do watching for their mindset? Because we have many challenged people who watch the show. How should they think?
Okay, so if you are, you've heard that phrase, you are what you eat. Well, I take it higher up. You are what you think. You are what you believe.
Yeah.
There is a cancer personality. I talk about it in my book. It's decades old. It was a theory put out by several different physicians. And it talks about the similarity in patients of cancer and chronic disease. And a lot of them have what I call stinking thinking. There's a belief in you're not worth it. Of course, it's going to happen to me. I'm surprised it took this long. Oh, it will never work for me. I'll never be able to heal. Oh, sure, I'm going to be fine. Yeah, I'll never do it. So it's really important to get a strength and purity of mind. And if you start with God, I don't care, really, I think God is large enough for all religions. So I think it is all one God. But if you start with whatever your God is, knowing that or believing that you are made in his image, that he created you, that you are a perfect being in his eyes, then how can there be anything wrong with you? Yes, we make mistakes. We're human. Yes, we have things we could do better or feel better about, but you have to start with loving yourself. And for most patients of cancer and chronic disease, that's really, really hard. But there's examples all through our life. If you look at the flight attendants, they say, put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then worry about everyone around you. Well, cancer patients don't do that. They put everybody else first. But the theory is if you pass out from lack of oxygen or if you die from cancer, who's going to take care of your family? Who's going to take care of your loved ones? Who's going to do it? So we have to love ourselves. We have to put ourselves first, and that's really hard. Mm-hmm. So having a God and knowing that you're loved, I have affirmations still to this day up on my mirror. I used to have them everywhere, the front door, in the car, on my purse, everywhere. I'd have an affirmation that said, God loves you, or God is large and in charge, or this is one of my favorites. Thank you, tumors. I've got the message. You can go now, because I really think they're just little messengers. And then I have all over, you are loved. You are beautiful. You are forgiven. We've got to believe it, but because we've had a whole life of not believing it, it's a daily effort. It's like you put on your shoes, you put on your underwear, you put on your belief.
Looking at your life, looking back, you would say there was a time that you didn't perhaps believe that. There were some wounds and things that happened in your life that you didn't believe it. Your major premise shifted. That's what that's called, meaning that, okay, if I'm created in the image of God, then, I must be perfect. And, and therefore, right? I mean, you changed your major premise. So, what made that shift, and what happened in your life to get you to the wrong major premise?
Well, I think that one of the things I read, and in doing research about the psyche and our personality profiles, our personalities are basically established, they say, by the time we're 5. So, little innocent children, a lot of what happens to us, it probably isn't meant the way it's said, but we hear it differently. We hear it as children, oh, you can't do anything right, Annie. I asked you for this tool and you got me that tool. And so that stays with you. And so you really have to go back. And there are a lot of mind-body tools and therapies that you can do to reprogram your thinking, to reprogram your brain. They're all really gentle. They take work because we tend to cover those up like the dog that messes in the corner, and the cat that messes in the corner and covers it up with a rug, or some dirt. And so we don't like to uncover that stuff, and it is painful. But I have patients all the time who call me and say, the cancer's back. What did I do wrong? And my answer is always, it doesn't have to be something you did wrong. It can just be something you overlooked, or it can be something you did longer than you should have. Or, you've got to look at every aspect of your life. And I find that most patients don't ever go from here up. They don't ever go into the psycho-emotional and the spirituality part of things. They're down in the physical all the time, which is good, but you got to look at what makes us tick.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You need both. Yeah. So, okay. I mean, it seems so trite to say we have to have that thinking, right? I mean, how does the average person change their stinking thinking? I mean, honestly, it sounds like, again, it sounds like such an easy thing. You seem to make the transition because you immediately attached to God. You heard that voice, you could anchor to that. But what about people listening? How did they get it?
Yeah, it's a process. I can promise you that I was definitely flying 15 feet above the ground, looking straight ahead when I got sick. I never examined myself. I don't think I knew who I was. I certainly didn't know I had a spiritual friend. I didn't know I had a God. I didn't have a God. And so it was a process, and it's a growth opportunity. So this is a personal belief system of mine, but I think this world is our purgatory. I think this is where we learn and grow our souls. And then when we die, we actually that's when we go to heaven and everything's good. Our souls have learned and grown enough in this life, and we're on to the next. So how do you learn and grow your soul if you don't have growth opportunities? So I look at this whole thing ever since 1992, but really it didn't come home to me till the cancer diagnosis. Till then, has been a growth opportunity. And I try and look at, how do you have growth opportunities if you don't have challenges like cancer, like a car accident, like, losing your home, whatever it is. If you can take it off of here and hold it out at arm's length and say, oh, you're just a growth opportunity. I mean, it puts a whole new spin on things. And we should try not to fear death, because what's the point? Here's a news flash, we all die. So it's like, what are you afraid of? It's going to happen, and it's none of your business when it does. You just do the best you can, right?
I think that's a big thing, though, that you didn't fear death, because your major premise was, all right, look, it's better over there anyway, right? So I don't have anything to lose. I mean, that's really, that changed the way you thought. I mean, completely. It's from the top down. I think that when people get the diagnosis, they're trying so hard to hang on that it becomes more of an emotional disaster. Honestly, I'll tell you something I've learned in all of my from pain to purpose, and that's where every one of my purposes, unfortunately, I learned in the pain. But the faster I let go and let God, the sooner I learn the lesson, the sooner I end up on the other side. It's always a reframing. Now I can reframe faster about the adversity that I'm in. Okay, God, what are you teaching me in it? What can I learn? Right? How is this going to make me better? So again, I think it's reframing how we're thinking about the cancer or the diagnosis or the sickness, whatever. We have to switch the way we're thinking about it as a first step. And then now all of a sudden the answers come. Now all of a sudden the peace comes. Now all of a sudden our bodies are able to change, our minds are able to change. That's my thinking.
I think that's beautiful. And when you said the first step, I remember thinking when I was trying to do this, when I was trying to change my attitude, every day I would get up and I'd think, okay, now pretend you're like that little kid that you just saw learning how to walk. The first steps, are like hard. The next time he takes a step, it's like, oh yeah, I remember how to do this. And the third time he's like, oh yeah, this is getting easier. And I think that's how it was for me. It was like every day I had to just remind myself, it's all right. This is a growth opportunity. You're doing this. It's fine. You can't do anything about it by fussing about it. So just, relax into it, enjoy it, find some joy. And that's what I'd say to people. Find joy in everything you do.
That you have to let go to find that joy, because we're like this in the controlling, right? You said there's those personalities that, really they bring on the cancer, if you will. And it's true. You have to let go. I had to let go in my life, and then it became easier. But now it's like I'm learning it through my children, right? As my children are 21 and 19, it's like, now I got to let go. It's even harder, right? It's like I got to let go of them now. It's always something. So.
Yeah, but isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful that it's always something?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
We're all in the same battle. All right, let's talk about some of the other things that I know our viewers want to learn, and we haven't talked a lot about on this show. Things like PEMF, which I'm very familiar with this. Have units myself, and IV therapy. biomats. I mean, you've done a lot of things, and I think our viewers want to hear. So let's talk about some of those real exciting things that you want to talk about, and I know would benefit not just some of our viewers' cancer, but other conditions as well.
Okay, great. Well, if you think, and this has helped me throughout the years. So one of the things I didn't find out until I got the cancer diagnosis, but that I unconsciously used for the other diseases. I found out that cancer loves fungus, bacteria, virus, and inflammation.
Yeah, that's right.
And actually, all diseases love fungus, bacteria, virus, and inflammation. So if you just look at those 4 components, and then you start looking at therapies that are anti-inflammatory, like pulsed electromagnetic frequency, and that realign the electrical body, and there's the other thing. There's an electrical body, there's a spiritual body, there's a psychological body. So, we've got so many options, you guys, so many options that we can play with for optimum health. And I say play because, again, remember, this is your journey of discovery. So, so I do a lot. I do anti-inflammatories, antifungals, antibacterials, and antivirals. I try and live that way too. So I try not to put anything in the body that encourages that.
One of the things I've learned over the years is that when I was sick, I kept trying to go after my fungus and different bacterias and even parasites until I brought my heavy metals down, because I was so loaded with heavy metals. It was keeping them there. They were able to hide from the immune system in and around the heavy metals that polluted my body. And I would argue that for a lot of other toxins as well, So to our point, it's a matter of doing all of it, right? I mean, that's the thing. So PEMF, it's pulsed electromagnetic frequency. What did you notice from it? And, there's many of those devices out there. Y'all Google PEMF and you'll see these frequencies. I tell you, people have sworn by them for pain, and no doubt anti-inflammatory, obviously. So tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about some of the IV therapies that you did.
Yeah, I really got into PEMF after studying the electromagnetic body. So
Right.
That we're a mix of positive and negative ions. Well, everything we walk on, everything we touch, everything that's man-made is South Pole magnetics, and which can be disease-making. They can be energy-making, but they can be disease-making. And North Pole magnetics are the healing and also the nourishing and the restorative. So that I was getting into that kind of thing when I found the PEMF, and I just so happened to have thrown my back out. I was supposed to go to Australia, and the electricity went off, and I was, multitasking. So I was on the phone trying to open the garage door. Forgot I had an double insulated garage door, and I heard this most awful pop. And and I was in bed for about 3 days, missed my plane, and then a friend said, "Hey, why aren't you doing PEMF?" And I was like, it's one of those blonde moments. I was like, oh my gosh, why wouldn't I write on the PEMF machine? So PEMF, really a good way to look at it is it in my take is that it realigns the electromagnetic frequencies of the body, and if they're aligned properly, then pain goes away. And also there's a big theory, and I believe it, that illness is results in a electrical magnetic imbalance, or the electrical magnetic imbalance causes illness. So it's kind of hand in hand.
Yeah, especially look at the electromagnetic frequencies that we're surrounded by. That's really throwing off a lot of what you're saying. So it becomes even more important. I know I saw, one of the things, you talk about the biomat is helping that process too. What are some other things that you help line up the electric?
Well, the Beamer.
Beamer, I'm a big Beamer fan. I laid on my Beamer this morning.
Oh, did you? I have not been able to afford one yet, so I'm very envious. Color me green. I love all the electromagnetic stuff. And of course, I do a lot of EMF blocking here in the house, and wherever I go, I try and minimize driving or talking in the car, and Wi-Fi in the car, because you're already in a car, you're already surrounded by an you're sitting in an electromagnetic envelope. So it's like, and you got little envelopes on either side of you driving down the highway. So it's, I try and minimize as much as I can. And then of course, sleeping, taking a nap on the biomat or your Beamer, just to, just to kind of detox body. And by the way, I just want to commend you on the detox education that you're doing. Detox is so important. And I love it that you're helping people understand that and all the tools available. That's, y'all, if, those watching, it's really important. And I detox every day, because every day we're taking toxins in. You can't get away from it. So detox. But don't forget the emotional, psychological, and spiritual detoxes too. So really important.
I hope they hear that message, that's for sure, because it wasn't, I asked the question facetiously, it wasn't one thing, but people want it to be one thing, right? That's why I asked the question for them. But really, you did it all, from the mindset all the way down. And I would too. I would too. I did for my illness, right? Mine wasn't cancer, but it could have been. But I would have done the exact same thing, by the way, right?
And if you think about the fact that if you really, when you start doing your research, what you really find out, the cancer personality, all this other stuff, your old life was the path that brought you to illness. So you have to find what fed the disease. No matter what the disease is, you have to find the source. So the doctor treats the end result. The doctor treats the tumor, your little messengers, your blood, whatever it is. You got to find what caused it and what's feeding it. And that's your journey. And so Dr. Pompa, I actually decided that this was an opportunity for me to change my life. And I literally changed my life, and I've had a ball. How many times you get an opportunity to remake your life, Yeah,
it's so true. But see, everything you say is because this is where you're coming from, right? And I call them 3%ers. When we look at statistics on the people who survive cancer, 3%, get over drugs, 3%. People that changed the world, 3%ers, right? People that took up arms to fight for their life, it was 3%. That's where the term 3%ers came from. You have to understand this. What you just said, though, 97% of people live their life in effect. So therefore, by giving a drug, treating the end result, the symptom, is very normal for their mindset, because their mindset is, we have a symptom, we take something. Oh, and by the way, it works, because when they were little, they had a headache and they were given an aspirin. That fixed them. When they had this, they were given that. So therefore, they learn that effect mentality instead of going, wait a minute, why did I have a headache? I raise my kids differently. What do you mean? Why do you have a headache? What'd you do? Were you stressed out? Did you eat something you shouldn't have? Cause. But unfortunately, that's only 3%. So it's like, so please, our viewers, our listeners, it's a mindset shift that we all made, that we look for cause in our life. And by the way, isn't that one of the first mindset shifts that we have to survive cancer? You have to have that shift.
Yeah. And it's if you think about it, it is shifting the paradigm of your whole life. So
it shifts everything.
Everybody changes. It's kind of funny. Have you noticed that? Everybody changes when you change. So you start changing things for the better. You start getting more positive, and it's like magic. Everybody around you starts getting more positive and starts looking at maybe they should change that bad habit of theirs. And yeah.
Even from an emotional standpoint, in other words, if you don't, if you find yourself saying, gosh, I just, these people in my life, what could you be causing to bring those people in your life? Like you said, our whole life, immediately when you start living your life from cause as a 3%er, you start to identify, we all do, I still do, I identify things in my life that I'm causing, whether it's a bad mindset or this or that. It's like, so examine your life, be a 3%er, live life from cause, no doubt.
I know, and I caught myself laughing at myself so many times. Like the one I learned where if you point your finger at somebody, you've got 3 pointing back at you. I was like, oh, the things you learn. It's really fun.
Yeah, thank God we can choose a life, of happiness, or we can choose a life of misery, making excuses, living our life in effect.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's what I tell people. Look, you got 2 choices: positive or negative, good or bad, happy, sad. What do you want to do? And it's like,
but you don't have cancer. If you had cancer, how could you? You did, and you still chose a life of happiness, which is part of your healing. I hope people are healing that. And believe me, when I was sick, I didn't go through it, like Mr. Faithful either at times. My wife was saying, God's going to take a message, to the world through you. You're going to be healed. I was like, I don't want to hear that. It's like, but I learned in it. I came around. Dang it, she was right. But anyway, so talk about some of the IVs that you did. I mean, what were some of those things?
Okay, well, so back in 2001, the only things I could find that were effective against diet were things that I'd already found. I mean, effective against disease were things I'd already found, like diet. I discovered mind-body medicine. I discovered God, did detox. And of course, diet can be detox. I found supplements. I found herbs. I think my first IV was 2002, and the cancer was still there. It had shrunk a little bit. A few tumors had left already, but it was still in my brain and my lungs and my breast and my lymph. And I read about this therapy called IPT, insulin potentiation therapy, and it's really, to me, it's a Trojan horse therapy. By delivering insulin to the body, it stimulates the disease cells, not just cancer, but disease cells, and puts healthy cells to sleep. And that's when you sneak in, Trojan horse in, the doses of whatever drug you're using. And in cancer's case, it was a 10% of the chemo. And so that was my first experience with an IV for health. And I was amazed by it. I mean, you sit in a recliner for 45 minutes to an hour. You go through the treatment. I read a book until I got to the hypoglycemic moment, which means your healthy cells are asleep and your disease cells are highly stimulated, ready for the drug. And I called it my cancer cocktail, because I felt a little high at that point, a little buzz. And but it was so easy. I got the chemo came down the pipe. They gave anti-inflammatory, antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral right after it, and I was done. I was like, and I remember Dr. Dan thinking, do I really have cancer? This is so easy. So that was my first IV that I experienced. Then I think in 2006 or 7, I can't remember which, was about the time that high dose vitamin C. I first had one of those. Nowadays, there's so many IVs. I mean, I've done, there's a new combination out that we've actually got a study going on. It's artesunate combined with high dose vitamin C. And artesunate is a derivative of artemisinin. And artemisinin is a Chinese herb that acts like chemo, but has none of the side effects. You can take it orally as artemisinin, or you can do it IV as artesunate. And the therapy was actually tested at Bastyr University, Naturopathic University. And it's artesunate IV followed immediately by a high dose vitamin C. And they're getting clear scans in stage 4 breast cancer. It's really cool. I've done ozone blood irradiation, ultraviolet blood irradiation using ozone and UV light. I've done curcumin, IV curcumin. That's pretty neat, because again, curcumin is an anti-cancer herb, and the idea being, if you're delivering it IV, you're delivering it to a much larger percentage of your body more effectively through the blood.
Yeah, no, exactly. I want people to understand that these things are available, right? I mean, so much is being done with ozone today. They can pull a certain amount of your blood. I've had this done myself just for health, right? It's like pull the blood out, put ozone in, push it right back into the body. There's machines called UVLRX, where they pull your blood out, run it through different light frequencies, green, red, blue, or ultraviolet. Anyways, and run it right back into your body. I mean, know that these things are out there, because they kill infections. They obviously bring oxygen into the cells, which is very difficult for cancer to function under that. So there's so many things, and of course, even hydrogen peroxide IVs. I mean, so many options out there today.
Yes, and I think that's the thing too, that I get a lot of calls from cancer patients. There are seemingly almost too many options out there. Yeah. They don't know how to make sense of them. And how do you choose which one to do? And, how does one choose? And, I would say, and I say this to everybody, first of all, do your research. I've heard, it's the latest and greatest. Okay, fine. Let me ask you a question. Do you like the look of lab rats? Do you think they look good? Do you think they have a happy life? I mean, basically, if you're doing something brand new, you are a lab rat. You're a guinea pig for somebody. So I say, look for the history, look for the anecdotal history, look for any science behind it. And then, you know, check and make sure that it won't interfere with anything else you're doing. If you have a partnership with a doctor, which I encourage everybody to have a partnership with a doctor, ask them, say, you know, can you help me with this? I think I might want to try this new thing. You know, like I actually had, you're going to love this. I actually had someone call me the other day and ask if the beamer would upset anything they were doing. And I said, no, but, you know, I don't think so, but thank you for asking. But why don't you call the representative who sold it to you, or, you know, write the company? Because, you know, you can't be too careful about things you do to yourself. You can't undo a lot of things. You can.
Well, you know, this isn't a caution. You have to understand, if people listening to this are on chemo is killing. It's a killer in the cell. So when you're taking certain things, even like antioxidants, you know, curcumin, turmeric, I mean, we can go down the list, even vitamin C, it potentially now can interfere with that chemo, because it, you know, takes away, or you're even on a detox taking out chemo, then the chemo is not going to kill. So you do have to consult your doctor, because there are things, you know, that can really disrupt the chemo. So I always bring caution to that.
Yeah, and go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that since you brought up chemo, when you are doing high dose chemo, basically your doctor is filling your body with chemo based on your body weight. They're putting a percentage of chemo in based on your body weight. They don't have a way of targeting just the cancer cells. So they are literally filling your body. So like Dr. Dan says, not doing chemo, high dose chemo, you will want to do a lot of detox and a lot of body repair, a lot of vital body organ repair. And while you're doing chemo, see if you can find out if you can protect your vital body organs and without interfering with the chemo.
Yeah.
So for instance, like if you're going to do something like SEIT, it's got 3 blood purifiers in it. Well, you don't want to do that on chemo days. If you're going to do high dose chemo, do your high dose chemo and don't interfere with it. So SEIT, the 3 blood purifiers, can actually weaken the effect of the chemo. And my attitude is, if you're going to do it, don't interfere with it, just like Dr. Dan said. But the IPT, it is a targeted chemo. So in that case, again, I didn't do SEIT on the days I did the targeted chemo because I wanted it to stay in those cancer cells. But at the same time, I had no fear that I was that my vital body organs were being harmed, or my healthy cells. Right. So when I wasn't doing that therapy that day, I did all my other supplements.
Well, I was just going to ask the question, you know, okay, so, you know, where can our viewers go to see? I mean, you made some roadmaps for people to follow that, because it is hard, right? There is too many things. So tell them where they can go.
Okay. Well, the book that Dr. Dan's talking about is a book I wrote to help cancer patients figure things out for themselves and build their own healing platform. And again, this book is interactive. It's a reference guide, so it's got all the science, it's got all the therapies behind each aspect of healing. So you literally not only delve into your own life, you can use all the information in the book to build your own healing platform as you go along. And the healing platform can work for you while you're going through therapy. You can do it again after you're through and you want to build a separate healing platform for, okay, now let's see what I can do with my life. I want to rebuild my life from, differently. I don't want to go back to the other one. I want to do a new one. So it's a good book. There's also our website, bestanswerforcancer.org. And we have Find a Physician on there. And Dr. Dan is been invited to be in our directory. So get a partner, get a physician partner. I am so impressed with Dr. Dan's show. And this is the kind of thinking, just listening to him today and other days, this is the kind of thinking you need in your partnership. You need somebody who's going to not just tell you things, but challenge you to look into yourself, encourage you to, feel good about what your choices are. And that's the thing. Feel good about your choices. There are no wrong answers. There might have been something you could have done different. But when you make up your mind, you embrace it and you deliberately step into it and go forward. keeping an eye on what happens. You know, if something doesn't feel right as you're going along, or you know, all of a sudden you don't feel as good, then you look at things. So
yeah, great advice. And Meredith, hold up the book there, and Meredith may have some lasting questions that are final questions.
Yeah, I love it, Annie, the healing platform. I thought it was just so well put together, and I love kind of the journal reference guide format as well, where you can just kind of really, as you're reading through, take notes and answer the really thought-provoking questions that you have there. So I think it's excellent. And I'm just kind of curious now too, you've done so much over the years to heal. Like, what are you doing now? What's kind of a day in the life look like with, you know, kind of what you're eating, the supplements you're taking? How are you maintaining?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. I change things up all the time because cancer can build immunities to things. So I like to keep it on its toes. And that keeps me on my toes too. It keeps my life exciting. So right now I've added some new supplements to my program. I found Beljanski Foundation. I actually had the honor of reviewing a book for Sylvie Beljanski that she's written. And in the book, she describes 2 herbs that her father discovered in the late 70s, Pau Pereira and Rauwolfia. And both of them have been proven anti-cancer. And you can take them on an empty stomach or with meals, it doesn't matter. But I'm taking them twice a day. So that's something new I added. I switch out Essiac tea with red clover stylingia every, once in a while. And then sometimes I'm just off all blood purifiers. I'm doing anti-inflammatories right now. I'm doing Wobenzyme. I do 2 twice a day on empty stomach. Let's see. I always do liver support. I don't care. I never change that. I might change the supplement itself, but the liver is so important. So I always do liver. And I'm on a ketogenic diet. So I'm high fat, very little protein and almost no carbs. And the carbs that I have are veggies. So, and then let's see, I'm walking every day. It's beautiful weather here today. I don't know about y'all, but we're in our fall here in Texas, so it's just gorgeous. And I do that. Of course I spend time with God every day. And I told Meredith before the interview that Jesus was my boyfriend. So that's how I spend time with God. I date Jesus. But a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, that's such great advice. And Meredith, write down those herbs. Send me that in an email.
Yeah, I will.
I'm sitting here. I don't even have anything to write it down with today. I do it in my office, but I'm having internet issues, so I'm out here. But yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, just such great advice. And we'll never stop, will we? I'll never go back. It's like I'm always in the discovery mode, that's for sure. So are you. Well, thank you, Annie, for being on the show. You're a blessing to our viewers, I can tell you that.
Thank you, Dr. Dan. I love what you do. Thank you, Meredith. It's great to see y'all.
Oh, you too. And thank you, Annie. I mean, this is just proof positive, too, that it's a multi-therapeutic approach, right? It's never just one thing that gets us well. It's the synergy. So thank you for sharing your story and sharing your tactics. Guys, definitely check out her book, The Healing Platform. And thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome weekend, and we'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye.